listening to the mele, like Nohea I Moʻolelo and Makalapua, because in my research of those mele, I learned so much about the Moʻolelo of our people. And you know, the wrapping of the newspapers around the flowers that came from Uluhai Malama, and sharing that part of what was happening in our community and communicating that to the queen, who was locked up, you know, and was being shut out. And you know, then the everybody was wondering, how is the queen staying so updated? And I really appreciated that we used that mele to honor our queen and to really continue that mo'olelo. Yeah, so that's really exciting. And I see we're live on Facebook, so aloha to all our friends joining us on Facebook. I see so many, and you know, it takes so many partners to make this happen. The Hawaii Pono'i Coalition has been partnering with over 11 organizations that we go live. Once we go live on Hawaii Pono'i, we then go live on so many other pages. So you may be joining us on the Hawaii Pono'i Facebook page. I see Tita Mehana Hine also joining us. You know, Office of Hawaiian Affairs goes live too, and Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement, Mana Maoli, just so many, Oiwi TV. So let us know where you're tuning in from, just so that we can see who's with us and say aloha to you, because we are watching our Facebook comments as well as here on Zoom, because so many are joining us here on Zoom. So aloha and aloha awinala is what Daniel's saying here in our chat. And so many again joining us. So maika iloa. You know, our theme for the week has been Hau'oli Lahanau e Lili'u. So like we were saying earlier, Wednesday we started with that birthday celebration, and then tell our friends what happened last night if they weren't able to join in with us.
Well, you know, it was a real privilege because I got to invite some buddies, B-U-D-D-I-E-S, David Kalama, who did this beautiful piece called Onipa'a. And 27 years ago, when I was but a kid, we had 5 cruise ups. So we were on board for 5 days, screening and filming and doing all this work down there. So it was amazing. And Joan Lander of Namakoka joined us as well. So we had a chance to reminisce. And this is a piece that very few people have seen, you know, and it was, it's an important work because it's archival and it documents and witnesses all of these amazing people in our community. And I mean amazing because every person who showed up was amazing. Our family, our kupuna, you know, our kahu, people who, you know, had positions and not. In other words, everybody who showed up was important to me. So there were I was having counted down there, I counted about 25,000, but David said throughout the week there were close to 40. So I've never seen that many people before, and it gave me the courage that changed my life, that particular Onipa'a. So this is what Hawaiʻinuiākea is doing for so many young Hawaiians today, really giving them an opportunity in all the programs at the university. So this is just a wonderful way to share with our community what is going on up at the University of Hawaii. So we're so happy to have you guys. Mahalo.
Yeah, you know, just a quick reflection on last night too. We saw so many of our kupuna like Kekuni Blaisdell, Haunani Bernardino, Kumuhula Lena Ala Kalamahaini, Charlie Maxwell, Frenchie DeSoto, Ke'ahi Allen, just so many. And, you know, and I shared some of it. So, you know, if you didn't get to watch the Onipa'a film before, and maybe some of our audience last night was just born around the 93, 97. So they're like, what is this? And it was the first time they were actually watching what happened in 1993. And you know, we recorded it, and so you can always go back and watch it. It's sitting on our website, hawaiianhistorymonth.org. And you can hear those key phrases of like when Uncle Anakala Kekuni says, the ahu represents the rebuilding of our nation. And then
Soli Niheo, right?
Soli Niheo talked about, we love our kingdom, we love our queen. You know, those are some of the key things that I wrote down as I was watching the film last night. And then there was also a statement there, all we need is our land, our aina. And yeah, I was just really moved by watching the film and really mahalo that. So I am actually gonna take us off of our screen share at this point so we can get a glimpse, a gallery view of our friends that are joining us, because today's topic is Hawaiian history, the past, present, and the future of our Moʻolelo. And, you know, we decided as a planning team that Hawaiʻinuiākea, the School of Hawaiian Knowledge at the University of Hawaii at Manoa, which got established in 2007, really plays an important part in Hawaiian history. And, you know, not just the history of our past, but documenting the history of today and inspiring and leaving that Mo'olelo for our future and guiding that Mo'olelo for our future. So I can see on our Facebook that we're on a gallery view so our friends can see who's here with us. So I'm gonna ask our friends that are joining us to do a quick introduction of who they are, maybe where they're tuning in from. And then I'm gonna turn it over to Dean Osorio to take us through our presentation. So aloha, John. Oh, let me get you unmuted here.
I think I can unmute, yes. Aloha and thank you. Thank you, and Mele and Leimaile for helping to organize this and for inviting us. I am John Osorio, the Dean of the School of Hawaii, Hawaiinuiākea School of Hawaiian Knowledge, and I'm really pleased to be here with 3 of our 4 directors from that center, from this school. We have 4 centers, Hawaiian Language, Hawaiian Studies, the Lo'i, and Native Hawaiian Student Services. And I'm going to let them introduce themselves. Go ahead, Makahiapo.
Aloha mai, o Makahiapo Cashman. I am the director for Kapapaloyo, Kanewai. I'm also a student. I'm a graduate from Hawaiinuiākea or Hawaiian Studies. So aloha.
Aloha. Willy?
Hello, my kako. My name is Willy Kawai. I'm currently the director of Native Hawaiian Student Services and also a former student of this great institution. Hello,
and Kekuewa.
Aloha mai kako. My name is Kekuewa Kikiloi. I'm the director for Kamakakūokalani Center for Hawaiian Studies. I'm broadcasting from Manoa right now, but I'm from Hawaii on the island of Oahu, and a former student of Hawaiian Studies also.
Thank you, Kekuewa. You know, for today's presentation, we have 4 different presentations. We're supposed to have 5, but we're waiting for Laiana Wong from Hawaiian Language to tune in. Could be technical difficulties, but we're going to carry on no matter what. Each of us are going to make short presentations on aspects of Hawaiian history that are really dear and important to us, and also that key into the work that we're currently doing now. And I want to just say that it just struck me that all 3 of the individuals here besides me were students, students of Hawaiian Studies, Kamakakūokalani Center for Hawaiian Studies. I was not a student because I'm too old.
Well, I'm also a graduate of Hawaii, so yeah. How about you, Meliana?
You know what? I got my master's over at the UH, but wasn't on that side of the street. So I was with Kimo Makahiapo.
So mahalo to the directors who have shown up today and are prepared to go. We're going to start with Willy Kawai. Willy is the director of Native Hawaiian Student Services, Dr. Willy Kawai, and his PhD is in political science, but he was an MA student in my class at Hawaiian Studies, and really happy to have you here. Thank you, Willy.
Mahalo, Osorio, and thank you, Malia and Laiana, and also the tech team for putting this production together and taking the time to celebrate Liliuokalani. As the introduction mentioned, I'm currently the director of Native Hawaiian Student Services. We are a unit within Hawaiʻinuiākea, a unit that was, it's one of the newest units in Hawaiʻinuiākea. It came about almost at the same time with the creation of the College of Hawaiʻinuiākea. Former Dean Mainet Benham of Hawaiʻinuiākea really helped to get the department established, along with former director Kahunawai Wright, who is now in the College of Education. Native Hawaiian Student Services is a co-curricular student services unit whose responsibility or whose mission, or a unit that's charged with providing academic support to Hawaiinuiākea majors, both in Hawaiian Language and Hawaiian Studies, but also the broader Hawaiian population throughout the UH Manoa campus. In recent years, and we can go to the next slide. In recent years, we've seen quite an increase in student enrollment. Hawaiian student population, Hawaiian student graduate rates have increased significantly. I would say over the past 10 years. Here's a little snapshot of kind of what the current student profile, Hawaiian student profile at the University of Hawaii at Manoa looks like. Excuse me, not current. This is fall 28 data. But this nonetheless, I think, gives you an overview of where Hawaiian students are migrating to, right? Other than Hawaiinuiākea, which is for a college of its size, holds a large population of Native Hawaiians. You can see that there's a wide variety of Hawaiians throughout the University of Hawaii Manoa campus. And so part of Native Hawaiian students responsibility is to track these students, is to help ensure their academic success. As you can see, the highest, I think, enrollment rates of Hawaiian students at UH Manoa occur kind of around 2012. And that's about 3,000 students. Currently, it's around this number, 2,600, where we have about almost these same statistics of about 1,900 students as undergraduates, 350 that are pursuing master's degrees, and then 127 in professional practice, 127 students either in medicine, the School of Business, or I'm missing one, law. The School of Law, Richardson School of Law. Another kind of statistic that sticks out here too is there's currently roughly around 130 to 140 Hawaiian PhD students that are in some kind of PhD pipeline at the University of Hawaii Manoa. When we total these numbers up, the University of Hawaii Manoa has the largest Native Hawaiian population, Native Hawaiian student population engaging in higher education in the world, right? Along with kind of the statistics of students, what we also see is an increase in Hawaiian faculty. There are now more Hawaiian faculty spread throughout the university, along with the growth of Hawaiinuiākea's departments in Hawaiian Language and Hawaiian Studies. We also see the emergence of other professors and other faculties spread throughout the colleges in institutions that historically have not had Hawaiian representation, right? And this is probably a lot can be said, especially in the realm of Hawaiian scientists, who I'll kind of touch on a little bit more. There's kind of this burgeoning group of Hawaiian scientists who are in the STEM field, many of which are women, who are really, I think, I would say, changing the way that Hawaiian students can now engage in fields that at times have been difficult to succeed in, right? But this is the overall kind of snapshot of what the current kind of student profile looks like here at the University of Hawaii Manoa. I'll add one more note to this slide in saying that, and this will kind of push me into another slide, but the current rate of students on this campus is 15%. So Hawaiian students comprise about 15% of the larger population at UH Manoa. We are still underrepresented in that sense. Mind you, UH Manoa is the only research intensive university that we have of the 10 school system. And so despite, I think, what are very exciting numbers, or numbers to be excited about, both in student growth and faculty population growth, historically, these numbers, I think, tell a different story, right? The fact that we're only 15% of the student population in 2020, and this is a university that opens its doors in 1907, should tell us that there's structural problems that are occurring and that need to be addressed. And for the most part, Native Hawaiian Student Services is charged with helping the university, I would argue, in its capacity to serve Hawaiians. You can go to the next slide, Malia. One of the other kind of highlights too is we just renovated our new space. So when the campus is fully open again, I think it's when the campus is fully open again, we're ready and welcome to welcome students to QLC, Kamakakūokalani Center for Student Services, room 113, where we have a new renovation that was recently completed. You can see here, this is the front scape of the office, which is really dedicated to what we call a student success center, a place where students can, of course, kind of go through the daily mundaneness of getting Ha'awina in, getting Ha'awina printed, doing emails, but it's also a space in which students can feel welcome, right? And students can feel that their Hawaiian identity is reflected on this campus. And so really looking forward to welcoming students here. This was a project that was spurred by former director Kahuna Wright and Nalani Balutsky in writing a renovation grant. The renovation grant also included the renovation of QL 113, but also Hawaiian Studies, the Kamakakūokalani Fiber Arts Room was also renovated, and also the Hawaiian Language department was also renovated. And this occurred through extramural funding. So make sure I want to acknowledge those that were a part of this fundraising. You can scroll, move forward. I chose this picture because it gives us kind of an earlier glance of kind of where the University of Hawaii Manoa stems from, right? And as I had mentioned earlier, the kinds of numbers that we now have on our campus as far as students and faculty are of course much greater than they once were. I have often heard stories recited by Dean Osorio and Lily Kala and others about I guess how lonely they were as PhD students, and that I even heard a statistic of that Julie Ka'umea from the College of Education put out that in 2005, around the year 2005, there were less than 50 Native Hawaiians in the world that held a PhD, right? So that I think gives you another glimpse to some of the barriers that Hawaiians definitely had to overcome in order to be a part of this institution, an institution that I would have to remind our audience that was that opened its doors 10 years after Hawaii was illegally annexed. It's an institution that people could argue were co-opted. It's an institution that at a certain point was led by Sanford B. Dole and others of the type. And so I think unveiling this particular history, although dark and gloomy at times, gives us kind of an understanding of where this institution comes from, right? And if we're really invested in making the kind of changes that we talk about a lot, that's written down in policy a lot, we should revisit kind of the not so nice history, right, of the University of Hawaii. Part of what Native Hawaiian Student Services sees is kind of a response to, or a way to better inject, I guess, a Hawaiian representation on this campus is by celebrating ali'i, celebrating people like Lili'u, who exemplified extraordinary leadership during extraordinary times. These are merely just flyers of kind of the services or programming or presentations that Native Hawaiian Student Services offers. The one on the left, this happened last year. So on January 14th, on this Monday, we got together in the courtyard at kind of the center of Campus Center, and we did screen printing. So this particular graphic that you see of Lili'u, which is one that we pulled from the archives. I believe this is from the archives. We turned into a screen print. And so on that day, along with kind of sharing information about this important event, we were also able to engage students in kind of a popular art exercise, right, in which they could bring their own shirt and screen print their original, very own Kuiniliokalani clothing. The flyer on the right, just another flyer of another kind of annual event that we celebrate at Manoa, which is Laku Oko'a. We bring together different faculty from within Hawaiʻinuiākea, but from within the community colleges, from the community, also other academic departments, to share with community and students the significance of Laku Oko'a. And this particular event is one that happened in November of 26th. But yeah, so this is kind of just a quick example of how we try to bring kind of history into education, how we bring history into higher education. You can go to the next slide. Some of the art we have here. This is kind of an ali'i series that we've done. So we celebrate the birthdays of ali'i, but we also celebrate some of the great impacts and contributions to Hawaiian history, right? We also celebrate their leadership and point out, right, some of the moments in which their leadership was most needed, right? And so along with screen printing, usually comes curriculum that also goes with kind of this popular education, this popular art. That's in the next slide, if you can push forward. Another example of that particular screen print on the top left. You can't see it too well, but that's an original from the archives. That's what you would have seen if you're walking in Honolulu in 1873. That is a flyer, and also it's a ticket to a luau in 1873, in which they're celebrating 30 years of Hawaiian independence. And accompanying kind of this popular art, as I had mentioned, is curriculum. Our staff and students had compiled, using the newspapers, using different repositories throughout Hawaii, both physical and digital, kind of a layout of this historical remembering of Laku Oko'a. This is also curriculum that we were happy to share with Kamehameha schools as well too, who also started to not only see the significance of screen printing, but also, the kind of education and curriculum that goes with it. Okay, next slide. Another, I think, important aspect of Native Hawaiian Student Services, and one that we always look to pay attention to, is making sure that those Hawaiians that those, albeit very few, if you will, that did engage with the university throughout its evolution are represented. Part of this includes, in the bottom left, you see Dean Osorio with Ka'ipu Baker, who are both helping to facilitate a campus tour, a campus walk, one that looks to highlight figures such as John Henry Wise, Hawaiian language teacher here, figures such as Fred Beckley, who was considered one of the first Hawaiian language teachers here as well too. If you can see also in this kind of image of the map, the campus is overlaid with the traditional place names of Manoa, which we try to bring to the surface. And slowly but surely, I hear about other people and departments starting to use these place names in referring to where their offices are. But I think more than anything, it's an opportunity for us to engage in the physical representation of this campus. There are not many places in which a building is named after Hawaiians, right? Along with Kamakakūokalani Center for Student Services and the Gladys Brandt Kamakakūokalani Center for Center for Hawaiian Studies, there is very kind of limited representation of Hawaiians on this campus. And to the naked eye, and I was just in a conversation earlier with another colleague, and to the naked eye, it would seem as if Hawaiians didn't engage in higher education, right? And so the reason for doing this is to really kind of bring these figures to light in hopes that they can inspire a prospective student, right? Who like myself was a little terrified walking into the University of Hawaii at Manoa. So these I feel are ways in which we can help to welcome students. You can go to the next slide.
Mahalo. Willy, I was just going to throw this in because we had a recent conversation at the Kuali'i Council about the naming of I believe it's a social sciences building, and we've been advocating for it to be named after Dr. Izzy Abbott. And we've approached Provost Bruno and have been really pushing forward for that. And, and just the role that individuals, Native Hawaiians, let alone a Native Hawaiian wahine that was so successful and impacted so many of our lives as a kumu. And, I just wanted to add that in there because that's something that's very current that we are trying to push for. And, we may need to put out a kahea to our larger community to get support with this.
Oh yeah, that's a great point. But I think the life science building campaign is the life science building that they're looking to name after Isabella Abbott, who's considered the first Hawaiian woman PhD and is a renowned ethnobotanist. Is probably the most widely published Hawaiian scholar of our time. And so absolutely, I know that Rosie Alagado, along with Kuali'i and Hawaiʻinuiākea for that matter, have all been a part of that conversation. And that's, that's exactly what, I think is important for, the young aspiring college student who wants to learn more about limu, right? Now has this kind of figure and this actual physical place to fall into.
Sorry, real quick. Even our resource center is Kapapaloyo Kanewai Resource Center, and then we named one of the areas, the building area, the Uncle Harry Kunihi Mitchell room, and then we also have the Hoʻokahiwai Hoʻouluʻaina Lanai area as well too. Just trying to recognize our people, and again giving our students that chance to see people just like them, they're kupuna, so yeah, so that's cool. Thank you. Sorry.
I wonder if we can move into maybe having Makahiapo talk a little bit about the lo'i as well. This is, I think the way, Willy, you're talking about the history of this campus, and I think what you're pointing to now is the fact that it was the Queen herself who authorized the creation of this university. But maybe with that, you could say a few words about that, and maybe we could ask Hiapo to say something about the lo'i.
Yeah, thanks, John. I knew 7 minutes was going to be a problem. But yeah, so just kind of off of what Osorio had mentioned too is, there's also, in the history of the University of Hawaii is the 1892 legislature, right? Who actually, and the Queen who signs off on January 4th, 1893, a bill that would create the Bureau of Agriculture and Forestry, right? And that later, albeit co-opted during the territorial era, becomes CTAR, right? So I think, I think what's important is recentering Hawaiian leadership in the role of higher education, because another important point is the University of Hawaii is not the first higher education institute in Hawaii, right? And that there's many that come before it. And they come before that because you had Hawaiians in leadership that understood the significance of education.
Right.
I can kind of wrap it up. I can kind of wrap it up there. Or actually, I just have 2 more slides. This also, a part of our work also looks to feature Hawaiian faculty throughout this campus. Although Hawaiian faculty only comprise, I would say, maybe 5 to 8% of the entire faculty body, that still leaves us with almost 100 Hawaiian faculty on this campus. And getting students engaged with these particular faculty, with Hawaiian faculty, like others have mentioned, you get to take a class from somebody who looks like you, who talks a little like you, and who comes from a similar place than you. And that, that may be all you need as far as a recipe for success in higher education. Mahalo nui, I will pass the baton.
Thank you. And Malia, you're going to have to do a little bit of work here because I was going to go next, but I want to make sure that the other directors get their stuff in, and I can, I can do this some other time. Could we go to Makahiapo's presentation? Just skip through mine, and then
sure.
I'll come at the end or something.
Okay, not a problem.
Thanks.
I'm pulling it up now. And as I get these slides up, I wanted to also acknowledge as we transition over to Hiapo that Keone Fairbanks has joined us here on Zoom.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Nice. Aloha, Keone.
Aloha, Keone.
Nice. Just jumping back on some of Willy's stuff, even the possibility of renaming certain areas Kapa'akea, as opposed to Dole Street, things like that. And a lot of it is coming from our students. So, to me, that's what always Hawaiʻinuiākea and our different centers were. It was a chance for our students to quickly find their voice and start using their voice. And I think that was always the key, especially for us at Kanewai. This first slide we have up is pretty much the founding fathers of Kapapaloyo Kanewai. We have Keone there, we have Nahoa Lucas, Kavehi, I think that's Naone, and then Akela, Uncle Harry, Nue, Ron Fenstermeister, Lolana, and Vinny. Yeah, so they're still very much a part of Kanewai. They still pop in. I'll still get a call every once in a while. But this is the group that we know as Ho'okahiwai Ho'uluaina. And when you know what was happening was they were young students, and this was in 1980, and coming in October of this year, Kapapaloyo Kanewai will be celebrating its 40th anniversary. And you know, so we have a lot of activities planned around that, and we're not actually going to turn it into a whole year. But it was 40 years ago when you know, Keone and Nahoa were students, and they were all hanging out together, and they rediscovered the Hawaii system, you know, and to have something as valuable as an Hawaii system, you know, still intact, still working. The only thing that wasn't coming all the way into our area, it was actually stopped by the bridge. When they built the bridge, they knocked that portion out, so it wasn't connected. But this crew here actually reconnected the Hawaii and brought the water around. And that's when Uncle Harry uttered the words, Ho'okahiwai Ho'uluaina. And then this group has become one of the first, you know, 501c3 groups, you know, in Hawaii. So it's nice to have their input still yet. You know, some of them are attorneys, and, you know, Laiana is one of the head chemists out at Board of Water Supply. So anytime we have water issues or anything, these guys are always there to support us, and even today. So we named our resource center after them, Ho'okahiwai Ho'uluaina, the Lanai area. And then, of course, the room was named after Uncle Harry, you know. And, you know, this group was going back and forth to the island of Kaho'olawe, and it was with Uncle Harry that they were trying to convince him to come down to Oahu and check out this area and this Hawaii system. And our Hawaii system dates back to 1400 AD. When they did the study on the Hawaiian Studies building, they actually went in and looked at the Hawaii system and they actually just stopped. They just said, you know what, we don't have to go any farther back. We kind of get it that it's a traditional system. So they convinced Uncle Harry to come in, and then he's the one that helped them open up the different lo'i there, you know. You know, since then we've you know, we host easy from almost up to 20,000 people a year just at Kanewai alone. And, you know, with having Uncle Harry there, the students, a lot of the work that we do now continues from their teachings, you know. And not only him, we have, you know, people like Uncle Silver Pilivale, Uncle Eddie, that a lot of people, you know, our students today, or past students, talk about a lot. A lot of them don't have that touches with Uncle Harry and Uncle Silver Pilivale. And Uncle Silver Pilivale, if you're a hiker on Oahu, you know that the toughest trail on Oahu is named after him. And that's because on first Saturdays, he would hike from the Kahalu area all the way to Manoa, to Kanewai every time. He would leave like a week before, hike over, camp out, hang out with us at Kanewai for like a week, and then he would walk back over, you know. So that's kind of old school, you know, and I think that's what Kanewai brings to our students. It, you know, it gets them, and that's why it was founded. You know, our students were looking for a place to go and practice mea Hawaii. Yeah, they didn't have too many opportunities, especially on Oahu. So a lot of our students at the university at the time were looking for a place to go, to gather, to share, to work with different practitioners and kupuna. And my first experience at Kanewai was actually, I was in Larry Kimura's Hawaiian language class. Yeah, that's him in the bottom there, right in the middle of the lo'i. So he was the one who actually took us to Kanewai for what was it? Not La Manaleo, but we used to go every Friday night. Yeah, and the place was rocking. Yeah, and I was you know, again, I was just new to the university, and it was, and then maybe a year or half a year later, I decided that I was going to be a Hawaiian Studies major. And this is where we came. We came here. Moore Hall was where Hawaiian Studies office was at the time, fourth floor. And then at the Lo'i, that's where we was hanging out. And, you know, it was, you know, again, only had two professors, I think, at that time was Lili Kala and Haunani at that time. And it was here and at Moore Hall where we started to find our voice. You know, we went out and we even went to the ledge and asked for free tuition for all Hawaiians. You know, and I was basing it off of the trust lands that the university is on. Yeah, so we went to the ledge and we asked for monies, and that monies, I mean, we was asking for all Hawaiians to go school free at the in the university system. But we got what we know today is the Kua'ana tuition waivers, and that's what we have today. But it was things like that, those different practices and repetitions, you know, doing rallies with our kumu, you know, thinking was going to get arrested, watching our kumu's fears. Yeah, literally, like we would be going to a march and we would say like Haunani, and she'd be crying. You know, she's just totally scared. But the image we see today is this powerful wahine, and she was. The things that she had to overcome was powerful for all of us. And seeing a wahine, seeing our kumu go through that was important. Was important for us. And you know, today when you look at a lot of our students that came through our classes and our school, and you look in our community, they're all leaders in our community. You know, wherever we go, especially different programs that touch our Hawaiian students, it's our students that are touching them. You know, there was a kupuna we used to always talk with, and they said, you know, a lot of the things you folks are doing now is prepping you for work that hasn't been even thought of yet. You know, and I was young. I was only a freshman in school, in college, and I didn't understand it then. But now I understand it. You know, like the things we're doing with our students now is preparing them for that, for these jobs that haven't been thought of yet. But it's going to be instrumental in who we are as a people, as Hawaiians, and our nation. Yeah. So, you know, and Kanewai has always been a part of that for us. In the school. We currently are working with a partnership with Kamehameha Schools out at Punalu'u. And we've been there for about 10 years now. And here we are planting. This was last month. Yeah. And you know, our students work really hard. They you know, we're battling heat right now, and that's the big tough one for us. Today we did our first Saturday. Actually, we do first Saturday, but we did it out there. It was only the crew, but people showed up. Yeah, we had about 20 people show up. So, and again, first Saturday is something we've been doing since 1980. And lately we've been getting a lot of requests to hold different classes around tarot. And tarot has always kind of been our cornerstone for us. And in the past years, we've been kind of known as a huli bank, and we take care of almost 60 of the 70 Hawaiian varieties of tarot that we know of today. And we've been doing Mala Mahaloa the festival, the Kalo Festival, for 10 years now. And every year we'll take a look at one or two varieties. Yeah, and we try to look at all the Mo'olelo, the chants, anything we can find on that variety. Like this year, for example, our focus was going to be all the tarot that was related to Mauna Kea. So we knew of maybe 2 or 3 that were centered around Mauna Kea, which is Hele Mauna. There's a couple more, but we eventually figured out in our research there was actually like 32 Hawaiian varieties centered around the Mauna. So we was able to bring those varieties out. Was able to bring chants that talk about different ways of planting, and for those of us who do research and understand Hawaiian thinking, our kupuna didn't give us the jump drive and say, here you go, you know, download everything. All our information that they shared with us is in the mo'olelo, is in the chants, is in the dances. That's where our information is. That's where our answer is. Even as something simple as rod, you know, our ohia lehua disease that's hitting us. You know, those kinds of answers is in our mele, is in our chants. So it's, you know, it's that whole opportunity for our systems to do and stay on its cycles so that we can wipe out different diseases like that, like rod, you know. So that's why we continue to study different varieties, because we want to know what the best conditions are. You know, now we're seeing a lot of, you know, I was just out at Kualoa, right, in Hakipu'u, and the problem they're having is the ocean is rising. So they're trying to find a variety that can handle the saltiness of the water as well as fresh water. You know, so we in fact, I gave them kaikea. You know, it's kaikea, kaiuliuli, and kaiala that are possibly the ones that can withstand the saltiness in that area. So we were talking story yesterday, and I was able to give them these varieties. So they're going to try it. They planted it yesterday too. And again, using things like the moon cycles and understanding our weather cycles and equinox, you know, coming up on the 21st. Those kinds of things are critical for our people and our students to understand, because when they, that's what I like to think is when they come to Kanewai, they you know, they're gonna get into the Hawaii. They're gonna understand what taking care of the water means and the importance of it. We're gonna read about it. We're gonna learn about it. But when you get there and the rock falls on your toe, then it's gonna hit you that, hey, you know, like this is what we gotta do. You know, we need to clear this area. We need to make sure this whole area down, and then it touches the ocean so that it can go back up to the mountain. Those things that our kupuna left us. So, you know, that's always what Kanewai has been. It's giving our students that opportunity to practice. You know, so
yeah, well, yeah. I don't want to interrupt you because I mean you just keep coming up with one more example of how important this traditional knowledge, and not just the knowledge but the practices are, how you make use of that knowledge, and how really brilliant our people are in terms of being able to figure, okay, so now we got ocean rising, and you know, and now we have these, but there are these varieties of taro that have been developed by our kupuna. They were not developed by scientists in a lab. They were developed by our kupuna to do exactly that, to meet that exact that need. But I did want to give to give Kekuewa a chance to talk about Kamakakūokalani Malama and that mission. And
we have 2 hours, John. Don't worry. we
do not have 2
hours.
Yeah. But Kekuewa, you go ahead and take as much time as you need here. Kekuewa Kikiloi is also, you know, a graduate from our university. He has a PhD in geography and has done work with Northwest Hawaiian Islands. He's been up there. He knows that area, and he teaches Malama classes for us, as well as now being the director of the Center for Hawaiian Studies.
Aloha kako. Thanks for the opportunity to talk today. Yeah, so I'm the director for Kamakakūokalani Center for Hawaiian Studies. Our mission is to inspire academic excellence, cultural integrity, and political strength of our ancestors. We're the largest unit within Hawaiʻinuiākea. We have about 20 faculty, 3 APT staff. Our enrollments are about 120 or so undergraduate majors, 30 graduate students. And I think what people don't realize is like how much our department and our school has grown over the years. I think when we talk about Hawaiian Studies, everybody automatically sort of switches back and reverses into sort of maybe the golden years of when we had, you know, really strong leadership with Haunani K. Trask, and we were on the cusp of sort of the sovereignty movement and sort of like heightened political awareness through the 80s and the 90s. But people should know that since then, Hawaiian Studies has evolved quite a bit. We are much larger now, and there has been a significant shift from strictly sort of the strand of kukulu aupuni, which was around Hawaiian politics, to a much stronger focus around malama aina, with a lens of politics overlaid on that. And this is important because I think that people realize that for all the advocacy that we were doing through the 80s and the 90s, if we really want to attain true sovereignty and political empowerment, it has to start with the land base. It has to start with our understanding of homeland. And so today, I'll be talking about this idea of understanding homeland and ancestral models of resource stewardship and the potential of Aina restoration movement today. Next slide. When we talk about what constitutes Hawaii, this has changed quite a bit over the last 20 years. You know, we constantly say things like Hawaii, you know, is comprised of 8 main islands, and, you know, Las Vegas is the 9th island, but nothing could be more incorrect. Yeah, the Hawaiian archipelago actually comprises of 21 islands that stretch from the eastern points of Hawaii Island all the way to Kure Atoll up in the northwest. Each one of these islands were spiritually connected to us. They mattered. They're part of our extended sort of ohana, yeah, and our connection to land. And the coolest thing about Hawaii is that, one, it is much larger than people think. Yeah, automatically people assume that it is some marginal rock in the middle of nowhere, but it really stretches a considerable distance. Hawaii, and because it stretches a considerable distance, it's sort of structured in a way geologically that it represents all the life stages of an island from beginning of birth all the way to death. Our ancestors understood this, and it mattered because by recognizing that each island, it represents sort of stages in the life cycle, they were able to understand their places very well, and to recognize that there were many, many microclimates and environments that required people to stay in their place for generations and to start to understand what the strengths of their particular wahi was. Yeah? So if you lived, say, in Hanalei on Kauaʻi versus someplace like Puna on Hawaii Island, you understood your Aina had different strengths. You started to cater to those strengths and to heighten those strengths by developing land management strategies that were geared towards what your home was. Yeah. And so why is this important? Because today with climate change, we live in such a world of uncertainty and unpredictability that a place like Kauaʻi has a lot of the answers to our sort of problems in regards to resource insecurity, right? And so the wide range of strategies that our ancestors implemented in managing different types of environments throughout the Hawaiian archipelago really represents sort of the wide spectrum of sort of problems that we're encountering today. And so a lot of people consider Hawaii as one of the leaders in sort of this biocultural sort of movement where we are bringing together science and we're bringing together cultural knowledge in a way that will help inform us and lead us into the future to help save our planet. One of the things, next slide, that I'll sort of draw upon right now is sort of an example of how this happened in the past. When we talk about the story of Kamehameha and his rise to power, probably the greatest story that we have in terms of his unification of our people and sort of the creation of a nation state, signifying really the power of Hawaii as a unified whole. We can look to Kohala as an example. But Kohala, the people of Kohala in the past recognized that they had a really unique district where their district is straddled between a windward side and a leeward side. This isn't always the case in most districts, where usually districts of an island are either on the windward side or the leeward side. So you didn't have these sort of dual sort of environments. Kohala recognized this, and as early as sort of the Mahi clans generations before Kamehameha, they started to invest in systems, food production systems that they knew that were tailored towards leeward sides, dry sides, and windward sides, wet sides. And in particular, in landscapes that were geologically younger, like Hawaii Island. And so whether windward tablelands, where they created intricate irrigation systems that ramped up water into the flat areas to enhance cultivation, or whether it was on the leeward sides where they looked at these dry areas and created extensive gardens that stretched over 12,000 football fields long. The people of Kohala were industrious. They were determined to elevate their district, and they were highly competitive. And so when you have Kamehameha coming in the late 1700s, he was really benefiting from the foresight of his ancestors and their investments into the landscape, which created the power base he needed to go and conquer the archipelago and to unite it under one rule. So when we talk about Ea, when we talk about political empowerment, Aina is the basis of that. And without Aina, we don't have political empowerment, right? And so fast forward today, next slide, when we're talking about the Aina restoration movement, I would say the 80s and the 90s were a critical, era of ingraining a political consciousness into our community, recognizing that we needed to organize and to do something about this sort of the overthrow, about our loss of sovereignty. And what you see starting from about 2000 at the university is a shift towards Malama Aina and recognizing that we can advocate for these things, but we can also start to put our hands back to the land. We can actually try to rebuild things, the structures and the systems of our ancestors in ways that will give us productivity and abundance back to the landscape. So this is an example of Kohala and the good work that Ulu Mau Puanui is doing over there and trying to restore some of the vast walla fields that comprise that area. And this is our students back in, this is like 2014 when we did our road school over there. So these are the kinds of programs that we have at Hawaiian Studies, where we are much more focused on Malama Aina now, with over half of our student majors majoring within Malama Aina, which is, kind of tells you where the priorities are of this generation, where they see the danger that our planet is in as a high priority for them to try to solve in their generation. And so a lot of our classes are geared towards breaking out of the classroom to think about ways to get students into the landscape, like kind of like how Hiapo runs Kanewai, and he teaches also our Lo'ikalo class. Like the students are actually in the landscape, in the communities, helping to restore places, helping to provide the research and the knowledge needed to guide these processes. And so definitely the Aina restoration movement is something that is probably front and center in terms of when we talk about the Hawaiian movement today. A lot of our graduates have gone on to form nonprofits in different communities to try to help their communities. They've also, gone into sort of research positions that help to sort of research how people understood the landscapes in the past and what is sort of the building blocks for us to reinvent these things into the modern era. And it doesn't mean that we're necessarily restoring these things exactly how our ancestors had it, but it looks towards the past as a roadmap, as to some level of guidance as to what it can be, also infusing sort of science and different approaches today to meet sort of the modern need. Next slide. So, you know, a lot of what we do, some of the wording was erased on this, so I apologize, was to look at sort of the documents in Hawaiian language, the land documents, the maps, the different types of information, the stories, the Moʻolelo, the different legends, the Lelo no Eao, sayings, words of wisdom of the past. And we try to reconstruct how different places understood sort of their landscape. So through taking our classes, students understand different approaches and methodologies to historical research. In cases, they double majors in sciences and bring that science perspective also into our classes. Some of the professors we have are also scientists as well, so they try to infuse that aspects into our classes. But a lot of this waihona, or this huge archive of information, is sort of brought to light today in our classes to try to understand various places, to sort of repatriate this knowledge back to communities so that they have access to it in ways that helps to inform, what they're doing. Definitely, it is not just Hawaiian Studies that is doing this, the numerous different nonprofits throughout the Hawaiian archipelago that have started up. It is the different land management units in the different elite trusts that are also on board and helping to spur this movement on, and different organizations in conservation as well that have partnered and made this really, I think, a bright spot in our success overall in Hawaii. And so those are some of the things that, I just have a comment that they cannot see some of the slides. I apologize. Some of this stuff kind of got translated into Google Docs and then it kind of got blurry. So these are just, examples of some of the land documents from the Mahele, where different tenants of the land provided testimonies of what they were growing, what their property looked like, mapping it out, the boundaries, the different geographical features of the landscape and so forth. And so all these things help to inform us today of what the land used to be and what it could be again today. Next slide. I think I forgot a slide. Anyway, let me backtrack a little. There are numerous projects throughout every island, throughout our Pi Island, from Hawaii all the way to the Northwest Hawaiian Islands, that are doing incredible things. You've seen pictures just a little while ago of Ulumau Puanui and Kohala that is doing scientific research and restoring the agricultural systems over there. Also in Ka'upulehu, I can think of some that they're doing incredible restoration on the coast. And then also in the dryland forests in the uplands. Ukukui on West Maui, also restoring the forest, the native forests up there. Paipai o He'eia, Kako'oiwi, Papahana Kuola in He'eia on Oahu, pretty much restoring an entire ahupua'a for the most part. That has been altered over time, but still has a lot of important resources over there. Waipa Foundation on Kauaʻi, also restoring an entire valley. Those are just some of the organizations that is doing incredible work out there in the community that I'd like to mention, but there are many more that I don't have time to mention. One of the as sort of this movement sort of built up in the early 2000s, where a lot of our colleagues have gone out and created these really important cultural kipuka in different places throughout the archipelago. One of the next phases of where I see this movement going has been the creation of integrated networks. So a picture right here is some of the efforts that we did with Kuleʻa Pa'a, co-sponsored with Hawaiian Studies, to create the Kali'o Kapa'akai think tank. And these are all different people and organizations in the community that are stewarding different sites and cultural resources, coming together to share knowledge, ike, to support each other, and to think of ways of changing policies and rules for the betterment of the Aloha Aina movement throughout the archipelago. Other organizations that are doing also really incredible work, like UA, which is really an alliance of different sites as well, focusing on fish ponds, fisheries, and limu. that are organizing our communities in ways that is giving us like real power in the way we are not just advocating anymore, but actually implementing and doing the changes. So these are some of the things I want to mention that I think is kind of where we're going today. The heightened awareness around Aloha Aina and just this movement to reconnect with land results in a much stronger, I think, political consciousness and advocacy, as we have seen in the Mauna Kea movement, where everybody rallies around that movement. I think it can't be understated what sort of the actual restoration of land has been doing to sort of reawaken our community in ways that make them more politically active. So I don't see Aina restoration and political activism as two different things, but they're one and the same, feeding and energizing each other. And so as you can see, in order for us to really make progress towards sovereignty and empowerment, it really requires us to sort of understand our homeland better and the true potential of our communities in stewarding our places. I think the university has a key role to play in this in the future of this movement. Mahalo.
I just really want to thank our directors for being here today. Hiapo, Willy, Kekuewa. I think the presentations were really, really wonderful. We thought we might have more time to do a discussion, but let me do a wrap up here instead, so that we can. Our people need to, get on with the weekend and get off to dinner and things like that. One of the things that we wanted to point out is that we are in a Hilihia, this is a time of turning. And our people have seen these kinds of moments before. They've seen them happen around them, and they knew that things had to be done differently than we've done them before if we were going to get our people and our community through it. And with global climate change, with COVID, with really the collapse of American leadership, political leadership, and it is a collapse. It's the things that are happening around us really force on us here, the people in Hawaii, to really care for ourselves, to care for our Aina, care for our nation, and care for the people who are resident here. And how do we do that? Our notion today was to just bring to the public the ways in which the university, and specifically this part of the university, Hawaiʻinuiākea, Hawaiian Studies, Hawaiian Language, Native Hawaiian Student Services, and the Lo'i are all really basically have been doing work to bring the knowledge of our ancestors, ancestors who lived in these islands for probably close to 2,000 years, who created an amazing culture and civilization, tremendously productive. And as Hiapo was pointing out, we're able, Hiapo and Kekuewa were pointing out, we're able basically to use every inch of land to its best advantage. And we're able to put up with change as well. When drought came, they met those things. When there was a shortage of food, they had ways of being able to overcome them and to share food. We are basically saying that it's our job to find that knowledge and then to get it out into the community in every way that we can. Not just by people who are taking our courses, but through public forums like this. So we're also really, really grateful to the organizations like Hawaii Pono'i Coalition and like Lei Anui Noi, because, and Willy, your bookshelf series, the way that we have been able to take this knowledge and say, okay, we're in COVID now, we're all in lockdown, we're not coming to the campus, how do we go on with our mission? And every single person here has talked about how we have proceeded on our mission, regardless of what is happening around us. And we offer that up really as our makana to our lahui, to the people of our nation, to this land. And we offer that up to our ancestors who gave us this knowledge and who helped us to earn this kuleana. And we give this up for our children and our children's children and all the generations to follow, because that is our function. That is who we are, and that is what it means to be Hawaiian. We're really, really grateful to you, to Malia, to Laiana, to Maile folks for putting this together and for inviting us. Mahalo nui.
Mahalo. Mahalo nui to each and every one of you for sharing your mo'olelo today. And, you know, on behalf of the Hawaii Pono'i Coalition, it's been a pleasure to host Hawaiian History Month and to bring leaders like yourselves to the forefront to share this exciting work. And, you know, I'm looking at our Facebook chat here, and I'm seeing just, again, a lot of gratitude and saying how they're inspired. And I think this kind of sums it all up. There's a haumana here or a friend that's saying mahalo, but ending it with wa ma'ona no, and just saying how fulfilled they are feeling by being a part of today's presentation. And I think that really that really wraps it up, because we heard a lot of mo'olelo of just all the different kinds of programs. And I know as a student that, you know, moved away from Kauaʻi and went to the university, it was these different pu'uhonua, whether it was the lo'i or there wasn't Native Hawaiian Student Services at the time, but it was Kua'ana, Operation Kua'ana. Okay. And, you know, in Moore Hall, we would gather together, and that was a really important part of us thriving as students at the university. So thank you so much.
And I just wanted to mahalo everyone at the various schools and programs, because I was thinking about mo'olelo being a part of the history. All of our collective stories go into making that history. And if you think about mo'o and the continuity of what all of that means, the context, the kauna, it's really profound. And I'm just encouraged and really interested and delighted to hear all of the connectedness and us moving together with great vision. And I just want to mahalo you, John, again, because, you know, since 2007, since the inception of Hawaiʻinuiākea, you've been down there at the palace, you know, for our onipa things, and God bless you. And it's just been great to now be virtual like this, because so many more people can enjoy. And gentlemen, you were awesome today. Just thank you so much for participating. Mahalo.
Thank you. Aloha to everyone.
Mahalo. So I'll put up some of my closing slides here. And again, a mahalo to each of you for sharing. If you would like to see more information about and learn more about Hawaiʻinuiākea and our programs, you definitely can visit us on our website at manoa.hawaii.edu/hshk. And there you can find a way to connect with these directors and our academic advisors and others. We have actually this semester started a lot of online courses through Outreach College. So if that's something that interests any of you, please contact us, because Olelo Hawaii courses, our Hawaiian Studies courses are all being offered on Outreach, and it's all online. So we invite you all to become a haumana, and because we're always committed to learning, no matter how old you are, a high school student or a kupuna that just wants to be in these kinds of communities. So we invite you to come and join us.
Ew.
Thank you.
Mahalo.
You know, so a few more announcements here as we wrap up. Our next week, our theme for the week is Ha'i Mo'olelo, from page to stage. And so we're bringing a lot of our Maipuina actors and playwrights to come forward, and they're going to be having these kinds of discussions and the importance of hana keaka and these retelling of our stories through this different medium. So on September 9th, You can see here on the screen, our next presentation will be the Overthrow Moʻolelo, actors in their own words. And so I'm really looking forward to that. And we invite you all on Wednesday, September 9th to join us at 9 a.m. As always, we have so many partners that we want to thank. Kamehameha Schools, the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, Friends of Iolani Palace, Kanaiokana, Oiwi TV, Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement, Lili'uokalani Trust, Nāmea Hawaii, Pu'uhonua Society, and then, of course, Hawaiʻinuiākea, School of Hawaiian Knowledge, the Department of Native Hawaiian Health at Manoa, Papa'olalokahi, Hawaii Youth Opera Chorus, Kahulileole'a, Pam Omidyar, and the Noah Webster Aluli Foundation. So mahalo nui again, everyone, and aloha.